a girl shot for speaking the truth, who fought almost alone against a terrorist group. Today in our episode of The Hero's Journey, we'll tell the remarkable story of Malala Yousafzai, social activist and Nobel Peace Prize winner. In a small town hidden among the mountains of Pakistan known as the Swat Valley lived Malala, a young student and daughter of Ziauddin, a teacher passionate about education and also involved in environmental causes. Despite Malala growing up in a very poor family with limited resources, her family made great efforts to ensure she received a good education, which remains quite rare in Pakistan to this day. Malala's mother, for instance, had only a few months of schooling when she was young. Malala recognized her parents' sacrifices and thus always strove to be a dedicated student, aiming to be the top of her class. During her childhood and adolescence, she enjoyed reading and had access to a wide variety of literary works. Education also enabled her to become fluent in Urdu and Pashto, dialects of her region, as well as in English. Malala studied in all-girls class at the school managed by her father. Life for our hero was difficult, but with dedication, she managed to overcome adversities and was becoming an increasingly intelligent girl with a deep social consciousness. However, living close to Afghanistan, she came to learn through reports about the violence with which women were treated by the Taliban in the regions near her home. The Taliban is a Sunni fundamentalist group that emerged in Afghanistan in 1994. Members of this fundamentalist organization have a radical interpretation of the Sharia, Islamic law. During the time the Taliban governed Afghanistan, their rule was marked by violence and disrespect for human rights. Malala's and her family's lives changed radically when she was about 10 years old. That's when the Taliban arrived in the Swat Valley. Taliban soldiers began to be seen on the streets, and a radio was set up by the fundamentalists to broadcast their radical ideology. Soon they began to influence local customs, and in the case of women, the Taliban's orders were quite oppressive as the fundamentalists did not accept that they should be educated. In addition, they decided to prohibit women from working except if they had a job or service in the health area. They also imposed the wearing of the burqa and did not allow women to leave the house without being accompanied by a relative. Despite these absurd ideas, the Taliban knew that the Swat Valley was an extremely conservative region, and the fundamentalist ideals had some receptivity among the men of that society. Unfortunately, Malala and her family were in the minority and suffered greatly from these prohibitions and changes in behavior. In a few months, the Taliban penetrated and won supporters in the region. As they gained support from residents, they dominated the minds of the valley's inhabitants and became more violent with those who disobeyed the new orders. Fazlullah, the Taliban leader in the region, began to radicalize his message. Thus, he encouraged people to get rid of their TVs, as the Taliban fundamentalists condemned the act of watching television programs. Those who didn't voluntarily hand them over could have their homes invaded and their TVs stolen and destroyed. The Taliban also began to demand that men no longer shave and banned women from going to the market and punished those who disobeyed them. The punishments were inhumane and created an atmosphere of terror in the valley. Soon it became common to see scenes of public floggings, executions, and mutilations of people, as well as many arrests of opponents. Finally, the Taliban also began to criticize people who sent their daughters to school. Therefore, young girls who wished to study were seen as rebels and threats to the terrorist group. The arrival of the Taliban in Swat put Malala and her family in a situation of extreme danger. Well, firstly, because her father was not an extremely religious man, and often made public criticisms against the ideology propagated by the Taliban. Secondly, he managed a school that taught girls and his own daughter attended the school. Not to mention that Malala's father regularly shaved his beard because he did not agree with those restrictions from the radical group. This caused Ziauddin to be threatened by the Taliban, and he constantly received advice from close people to change his behavior, as he was putting himself at risk as well as his own family. That's how in a short time his family became a target of the Taliban. On the other hand, Malala, who was now 15 years old, showed great courage and leadership sense to combat the radical ideology of the Taliban. She began her activism in defense of women and access to education. Malala began to gain international recognition when she started writing a blog for the BBC. Using the pseudonym Gul Mukai, she reported her daily experiences and the challenges of studying under the Taliban regime, which was imposing its brutal authority in the Swat Valley, her hometown. Those reports began to bring great visibility to the international community, which obviously generated outrage among the fundamentalists, who then began to attack schools in the valley to terrorize and prevent young people from continuing to share their opinions on the internet. It's estimated that more than 400 schools were destroyed by the fundamentalists in Swat. Digital activism brought recognition to Malala, and she received a Pakistani award known as the National Youth Peace Prize in 2011. She was also sought after by media outlets for interviews. However, the more famous she became, the more dangerous her family situation became, and the more threats occurred. For some time, Malala feared what could happen and changed her routine a bit to ensure her safety. Despite the fear of being a victim of the Taliban, Malala did not give up. She remained engaged and mobilized voices to defend the right of women to study. Because of the criticism she made of the Taliban, this fundamentalist group decided to definitely silence Malala's voice. On October 9, 2012, 2 terrorists were sent to kill her. They stopped the bus she took to return from school. Upon entering the bus, one of the terrorists asked who Malala was. The children did not answer, but they looked frightened at the young activist. The terrorists identified Malala in one of the seats and shot her 3 times. One of the bullets entered the young woman's head, and the other shots ended up injuring 2 classmates who were next to her, causing minor injuries. Malala, seriously injured, was promptly attended by doctors in Pakistan and later transferred to the United Kingdom for specialized treatment and recovery. Malala remained in England and settled in the city of Birmingham, this stay being an obvious measure to ensure her and her family's safety. Malala completed her basic studies in England and graduated from the University of Oxford. She remained engaged in the cause of education and created the Malala Fund, which promotes campaigns to encourage girls' studies. This event not only shocked the world, but also greatly explained Malala's cause, turning her personal fights for education into a global movement for this right for all girls. The brutality of the attack highlighted the violence many girls face when seeking education in parts of the world dominated by extremist regimes. The attack on Malala Yousafzai is a somber reminder of the dangers real-life heroes can face, especially in areas where basic rights are severely restricted. However, it also serves as a testament to human resilience and the power of a courageous voice to inspire global change. The attack transformed Malala into an internationally known figure and generated recognition for her activism. She won numerous awards, and the most notable was the Nobel Peace Prize won in 2014. Today, Malala Yousafzai continues her work as a global activist for female education. She is the co-founder of the Malala Fund, a non-profit organization that promotes the education of girls around the world, especially in regions where access to education is more restricted. She also actively participates in international conferences and events, using her platform to advocate for political and social changes that guarantee education for all girls. In addition, Malala writes and speaks about issues of gender equality, peace, and human rights, continuing to inspire many people with her message of resilience and hope. She has a biography titled I Am Malala, the story of the girl who stood up for education and was shot by the Taliban. So, did you already know the story of Malala Yousafzai? Indeed, she is a true hero who fought for a greater purpose, and even suffering physically, continued to spread her message around the world and help others. Now, if you like getting to know Malala's journey, then take the opportunity to leave your like so that this content reaches more people, and subscribe to our channel to receive the next episodes of the hero's journey. Today we end here. I'll see you next time.